Welcome back to my first impression series for One Piece Live Action Season 2, unscripted videos recorded after I watched the episodes with a focus on themes and characterization. If you haven't seen the episode I'm talking about yet, don't watch the video unless you don't care about spoilers. Oh well, not retaking that. This time we're covering Episode 3, Whiskey Business. There might be a few cuts in this video because I am coming down with something, so if I need to stop and take several breaths, I'll just cut those out of the video. So if you see the background just suddenly jump, that's why. So we start off with Zoro having a bit of a Mihawk flashback as he's doing some shadow sparring instead of weightlifting, which I guess is good because Zoro does some crazy weightlifting in the manga, and I'm not sure if that would translate because they are trying to be a smidgen more realistic. But shadow sparring with Mihawk, that's pretty good, and it kind of sets up Zoro's internal struggle for this episode, which, as its own thing, works well, but I'll have a complaint about it later, so we'll get to that. And it did remind me how impractical Three Swords style is in the live action, which is kind of... I pointed it out in the first season that Zoro rarely goes Three Swords style because in manga it's great. In manga you don't have to think about the logistics of holding a sword in your mouth and your neck muscles and all of that and coordinating three blades. But in the live action, he normally just uses one or two because it's just not practical. So it was amusing to be reminded of that. The sailing to Whiskey Peak is, I enjoyed it. I liked the banter, and I thought it was a really cute and clever way to show the crazy weather of the Grand Line with just Nami. First she goes in and she's clearly just been swimming and she's like, man, now it's pouring wet, and it goes back out and like, man, now it's snowing. And I thought that was a very fun way to do that and to save budget without having to render the whole scene. So that was fun. It's weird that the episode tried to set up Mr. Nine as like an antagonist to Zoro and him playing these mind games with Zoro, because Mr. Nine is such a goof. So he's not particularly convincing. Yeah. Luffy, meanwhile, is trying to learn about Miss Wednesday, but he wouldn't care. And I noticed not somebody, but I think a couple of people mentioned it in the comments of the last couple of videos as well. And I'll just pause it to say, hey, thanks for the comments during the videos. And I actually really like reading them because... my mic is just slipping. I really like reading them because some of them bring up legitimate things that I've missed. And, you know, people are saying like, hey, what did you think of the cinematography? Not the cinematography. Is that the word I'm looking for? Like the shot composition and all of that. And I've just been so focused on the themes and characterizations, especially when I'm writing notes while watching the episode, that I haven't really thought about that. So maybe I'll have something to say if I do put a big video together on a rewatch, but because I'm so laser focused on, okay, the theming, the characterization, I haven't noticed that sort of stuff. But also people have brought up some really valid points. Like there was a lovely long comment about, hey, this is how they did Crocus, and it brought up some things that I totally missed. So yeah, really appreciate that. Back to the episode. Yeah, Luffy being way too interested in Miss Wednesday. And it's like, ooh, I can tell there's something different about you. And it's like, Luffy wouldn't care. He would be far, far, far more interested being outside and be like, whoa, this crazy weather and building a snowman and all of that sort of stuff. Though I think freeing her is probably in character. When they finally arrive at Whiskey Peak, I was a bit like, oh, are they not doing the big pirate greeting? Because they aren't sailing into shore with all these people saying, oh, welcome pirates. So that was a bit... I was like, oh, how do they know they're pirates? And then people are just being friendly, obviously, because they recognize Luffy. But in universe, if they're pretending to just like pirates in general, how would they know? I don't know. It felt awkward. It felt awkward and different, especially when Igaram just goes up and gives Luffy a big, oh, you're a pirate, let me give you a big hug. That said, I was kind of struck with how short Igaram is. So used to Igaram being this big guy, and then he's like a little shorter than Luffy, it seemed, which was like forgetting the hair, and it just kind of struck me as a bit funny. And also Luffy, he wouldn't bring up assassins, he wouldn't care. Luffy cares too much. Luffy is too kind and he cares too much, which we'll get back into. And also the music sting does give the game away. It's not nearly as tricky and like, let me say, in the manga, it's obvious that something is wrong. Like there's this unease in the way Igaram sort of like fobs off, like, oh, you don't need to worry about the log pose resetting, da-da-da. And like there's something wrong. So in a way, it's actually more convincing here that they are not villains. In fact, like I said, I watched these with my honey. She thought, oh, do these people just rob pirates? She didn't put together right away that they were part of Baroque works. So in a way, it was more convincing than the manga. At the same time, it's a bit more awkward. And something didn't sit right. Maybe just didn't translate entirely correctly. I did like that Luffy brought up finding a musician. That was very in character when he was saying, hey, we're looking to Igaram, or should I say Mr. 8. Bringing up with Mr. 8, hey, we are looking for a musician, so that was good. The thing that wasn't right, when they jumped off the ship, Mr. 9 and Miss Wednesday saying, bye-bye, baby. Perfect, loved that. Didn't do the triple backflip or whatever, but, realism and all that. But when they get to shore, there's a level of distrust between the two, which didn't sit right. They are actually... I know Miss Wednesday, or Vivi, is undercover in Baroque works, but she is actually pretty good in her role as a Baroque works agent with Mr. 9, and they're actually quite a tight pair. So the fact that Mr. 9 was like, oh, you're going to try and steal my credit for the mission and all of that, it just didn't sit right, especially considering the scene later, which was pretty good. And also, unless I missed something last episode, it's very fortunate they went to Whiskey Peak, because in the manga, they've got no reason to suspect them. They don't know they're assassins. They didn't attack them. They're like, oh, you're trying to hurt Laboon. We don't want you to hurt Laboon. But aside from that, you haven't really wronged us. Like, we understand where you're coming from. Well, no, they don't really go that far, but they're like, yeah, okay, you wanted food for your village. You can't touch Laboon, sorry, but hey, we'll give you a lift back home. Here, they're like, no, you're our captives. And Crocus says last episode, like, hey, there are several magnetic fields you could lock onto, instead of them trying to lock onto specifically the one to get to Whiskey Peak. So, golly, they're fortunate that happened. That aside, the scene in... Is it a bar? I guess you would just call it the bar scene. I really liked that. That was really good. Nami drinking the nun under the table and everyone else having a great time. Usopp playing darts. That was really fun. I really liked that. So as a whole, I thought that scene was a really good sort of adaptation and got the feeling right. Luffy surrounded by all the eaten plates of food. One thing, I guess, because I write these notes as I'm watching, I assume that some things are going to be more the same in the manga than they actually are. So I say it's a shame that Nami doesn't con everyone pretending to be drunk. Like she isn't passed out on the floor. And it's kind of missing that cleverness bred from years of deceiving pirates. Like when she's like, she pretends to get on a pirate crew's side, or she pretends to be drunk and then she robs them blind. It's missing that savviness. It shows that she can hold her liquor, which is fair. But then she's like, oh, I want to draw the island, which is also fair. And then the nun's like, oh, you shouldn't go up there. It's dangerous. And Nami, also out of character, is like, oh, it's dangerous. Oh, I want to go. Maybe they're hiding treasure there. And that's also against her character, because if she thought these people were innocent civilians, then she wouldn't be wanting to steal her treasure. And that's an issue carried over from season 1 as well, which she shouldn't be wanting to steal treasure anymore because Arlong is defeated and her village is freed. Yes. But yeah, so she goes out and obviously figures out there's something going wrong. I did write, we don't get the 100 bounty hunters scene. And I wrote that because it became very obvious that we weren't going to have the moment where everyone is passed out, or they think everyone is passed out, and then Zoro's on the roof and it's like, I know who you are. And he's got that big grin and then he's like, come at me, bro. And that's such a great scene in the manga, and it is a shame that we don't have that here, and once again, I'll get back to it. Instead, we get Luffy in the cake shop eating pies. It's a fun scene. Obviously, Mr. 8 is far less intimidating, far more friendly, and they're playing both him and Miss Wednesday. Well, actually, no, Miss Wednesday's played relatively straight until she meets Mr. 8, or she meets back up with Mr. 8. But Mr. 8 himself, or Igaram, is definitely played much more friendly and less intimidating than he is in the manga. But also, the Vertigo dance, it works on Luffy, which is pretty funny. In my notes, I specifically wrote, "Oh God, the Vertigo dance," and then followed by, "Oh God, the Tulip Pirates," which makes sense that the Tulip Pirates get killed here, because in the manga they get defeated by Full Body and, oh my gosh, I've forgotten his name, Django. And because Django doesn't exist, I guess they can't have their cover story, so the Tulip Pirates need to get defeated somewhere. Why not here? I'm glad Zoro didn't get drunk. I was worried that Zoro did get drunk. I wrote once again in my notes, Zoro doesn't get drunk. Swordsmen wouldn't allow themselves to get that drunk. Oh good, he isn't. Instead of starting the fight in a cool way on the roof, like with us silhouetted by the moonlight and looking down on all the Baroque Works agents, it starts with him peeing against a wall, which is far less cool. Can I just say that? It's far less cool. And I think for that reason, the 1v100 fight just doesn't hit the same. The 100 bounty hunter fight is... everything about it is tonally wrong. Because... and my notes are out of order, so I'll spitball it here. In the manga, Zoro, this is the first fight of Zoro where we don't see him significantly handicapped by an injury or something else. And he's got his 2 new swords, and he's like, hey, it's time for me to test these out. 100 bounty hunters, this sounds like a great time. And he has a great time, and like, yeah, he gets injured a little bit here and there, but for the most part, he is running rings around all these bounty hunters. And while in the live action, he does say, oh, time to test out these new swords, he's a lot more serious about it. And it's framed as like, oh, I don't feel strong. I don't measure up to Mihawk. I'm so far away. Like, it's introduced from that initial scene as well. And so, like I said, in the episode itself, the framing works, but it's different. Like, this is supposed to be a sort of, not a heroic, it's a triumphant moment of Zoro of like, hey, I've been fighting with like my stomach cut open, I've been fooled by Buggy, and so I had to fight that injured, and I've just been bloodied and injured, and like I win, but except against Mihawk. Finally, I have this moment of like, okay, Zoro's gonna let loose, and he's trying out his new swords, and it's great. And here it's framed as, I'm not good enough, I don't measure up to Mihawk, I feel weak, and I just have to take all these guys down, and this is like training. And it's the vibe is wrong. Like, Zoro isn't smiling enough. I think that's what it comes down to. This is Zoro with a big grin. I try not to swear, so I'm not going to say it's a poop-eating grin, but he's got a big grin on his face. It's like, oh, I'm going to have a good time taking you guys down. Instead, he's just like, he's tense, and he's like, okay, I've got to do this, and oh. And it's also not framed in the same way of him, like, protecting the crew. His crew, I mean, I guess he protects Usopp and Sanji, who, where they gonna... What were you two doing with those twins, Usopp and Sanji? What were you gonna plan? What were you planning to do if they weren't Baroque Works agents? You're gonna be, extra close buddies. Hey? Also, I don't like that Zoro puts on the headband. That should be exclusively for when he's gonna start trying. And the fact that he's putting it on here while also only using 1 or 2 swords at a time means that he is trying, when he should be stomping these guys. I think that's what it comes down to. I'm not a Zoro, I'm not like the I stand Zoro sort of guys. I'm a Brook guy. Look, Brook is my favorite Straw Hat, so I don't care between him and Sanji one way or the other, but it's just wrong. Now we cut back to Vivi and Igaram, or Miss Wednesday and Mr. 8, And yeah, they give away the game too early, but I guess that's fine. And also, the ice cream car is no replacement for Karoo, my sweet duck-billed boy. Hopefully he shows up in Alabasta. I also found it funny Sanji wasn't bothered by Zoro beating up women in front of him, and we saw that with his fight against Tashigi the previous episode, but they've really like turned that side of Sanji down immensely, which I understand why for a Western audience. All that stuff was written pre-2000. It was a different time. Something that I think is important that isn't mentioned is when Zoro points out that the Kitetsu 3 is misbehaving when he uses it, that hey, a sword should only cut when its master wants it to. So that was kind of skipped over. It's a relatively minor point in the grand scheme of things, but it is an important, it is a moment saying hey, swords can have a mind of their own. Yes, this curse blade didn't cut Zoro. It's kind of, he's been accepted as its master, but it's still a problem child. I did really like the detail when Luffy crashes the ice cream cart or whatever it is, that when Nami sees him, she grabs his hat off the ground immediately. I think that's a really nice detail. So really, props to that. That's really good. My notes are cutting back and forth because the episode obviously cuts back and forth as well. When Zoro versus Miss Monday, music was intense, but there was no head grab scene. I guess they didn't want Zoro the minority hunter going too strong too early. But that is that's a scene showing how strong Zoro is when she grabs him and is beating him down, and then he's like, hey, I'm stronger than you, and you are the strong person here. You are the muscle woman here, but I am holding your skull down with one arm. So it's a shame he doesn't have that cool moment either. And like I said, he doesn't look like he's having enough fun during the fight. And I guess as the 1v100 bounty hunter fight comes to a close, I wrote, it's the reason and the meta-narrative are important, and that's why it feels a bit mixed. So I've already said, this is Zoro's triumphant first big fight, him not being injured, and he's supposed to be having a good time, versus live action, he's taking it very seriously, he's full of doubt, he's thinking of Mihawk, so that's all switched up. There's also, they completely eliminate the Zoro versus Luffy, and I understand why, because it's an unpopular scene, and they're taking this moment to retcon it. Not retcon it, but remove it, because, a lot of people are kind of mixed on that scene. But that scene did serve a purpose. A dual purpose, actually. It served the initial purpose of showing Vivi how strong these people are and that she could potentially rely on them. But it also showed the more important purpose that Miss Valentine and Mr. Five, who do show up here as they do in the manga, don't hold a candle to them. While during the episode, they're actually played a lot more intimidating, Miss Valentine and Mr. Five. In fact, Luffy runs away from them, while in the manga they kind of beat them up without even trying. And it's a matter of sort of scaling the enemy. Because if Luffy is going to eventually take on Mr. Zero and Crocodile, he can't be struggling too hard with the elite agents, because otherwise it's a bit too much of a jump. And I get, obviously, he struggles with Mr. 3, but that's not because Mr. 3 is necessarily strong. It's just a bad matchup with Miss... I can't remember the painter one. We'll get to it next episode, I'm sure. And also just the planning. The planning is what he's weak to, not necessarily the brute force. Which is, another aspect of when we get to Little Garden. It's the mixture of the narrative with Nami. Again, she's not being shown as clever and conniving. Instead, she's just like, oh yeah, that was fun, let me do this. And then she's discovering things relatively in a straightforward way rather than her deceiving them. So she's shown as less clever. And also the whole scene with Vivi, it's... I guess I'll get to it now. Luffy... Like I said, Luffy's too kind, he's too understanding, he's too nice. In the manga, the way that it works is Nami strikes a deal with Igaram to protect Vivi, because Mr. Five and Miss Valentine are after her, and she says 1 billion berries. And she's framing it, hey, I'll do it for 1 billion berries, but she feels for this girl trying to protect her nation because Nami was trying to protect her island, and she feels that connection there. And it's Zoro and Luffy, on the other hand, they're doing it because Nami says so. Zoro owes Nami that debt, which he should have brought up this episode, from Logetown, that he didn't even spend the money, but he still owes interest. And Luffy is just like, oh, you struck a deal, all right, Nami, I'll do it for you. But he doesn't care about Vivi or her worries, her fears, her goals to save Alabasta, because that doesn't concern him. Like, he doesn't... Luffy isn't that guy. Obviously, live-action Luffy is far more kind and nice, but even still, he's just like, oh, I've got a gut feeling about Vivi. Oh, yes, okay, I promise you. And it's a very serious scene. I promise you, we will do this. And Luffy shouldn't have a reason to. Like, it's one thing for Luffy to not be a jerk. Like, it's one thing for live-action Luffy, who's much, much nicer, to be like, okay, I see someone in need, I'm going to help them in the immediate. Like, I'm going to... If he beat up Mr. Five and Miss Valentine and said, hey, I got rid of this danger for you, now you can do that thing you need to do, that would be one thing. Instead, it's like, no, I promise you, I'm going to get you to Alabasta. And I'm like, yeah, it's too much again. I understand this is the live action Luffy's character, but there's a reason why he's not supposed to be like this. He's supposed to be almost single-mindedly focused on doing what he wants, and sometimes that benefits others. And the main problem is, because he's made this promise to help Vivi get to Alabasta, it gives less room for the development of their relationship later. I think that's why it bugs me now. If Luffy is so kind, it's like, I will get you to Alabasta, I'm going to help you save your nation, then that gradual closeness that builds as Luffy watches Vivi, and then Vivi protects one of his crew, or not protects, but chooses the life of a crew member over her own wants and needs, it doesn't give Luffy that space to grow and appreciate Vivi and then want to help her versus promising and wanting to help her initially. That's it. I think I'm sort of figuring out the words as I say it. Luffy doesn't want to help Vivi, he does it because Nami promised. And over the course of the journey to Alabasta, due to how his interactions and his time with Vivi, he then wants to help her, so much so that he'll put his life on the line because she's his friend. And this seriousness of which he initially takes on Vivi's burden is taking that away from the story, or it's like reducing the aspect. Now, obviously, Vivi will still need to become close with the crew. I'm sure that'll happen in Little Garden, but yeah, it's off. Then yes, Igaram gets lightly stabbed by some debris, and it's treated with the full force of seriousness. And I get it. Live action, more realistic. This sort of thing would, especially in those times, lead to infection and probably kill you. It's just hard to imagine, oh no, I've been lightly stabbed. And now they're like, oh no, Igaram, don't leave me. I can't do this without you. And it's so much more serious. And I kind of chuckled a little when I was watching it because I was like, man, this injury is so weak compared to what the manga people have to deal with, but I get it. At least we get to see Igaram's gun hair, and I was impressed that it actually, scared off Mr. Five and Miss Valentine. Mr. Five and Miss Valentine were done pretty well. I do find it funny that the explosion, which is supposed to happen as he leads Baroque Works away, is, that's supposed to be done on the ship, and the ship explodes, but it's like his sacrifice deceives Baroque Works into thinking that Vivi has also been defeated when, he explodes on shore. And it's like, and I guess that's actually an issue where it's, Baroque Works, they aren't deceived. Igaram just gets killed. Well, and actually, here's the real question. If Igaram comes back, how are they going to justify that? That's a question. but at least he explodes. I'm not sure how to say that. But yeah, so Baroque Works obviously knows that Vivi is still alive and with the Straw Hats, and also we don't see the Unluckies. I know they're in this season, but we don't see them here. So we miss out on that really, really, really funny scene where the Unluckies are just observing them and they fly away, and I'm just like, who is that? Why did you... And also, Vivi hasn't told them that Mr. Zero is Crocodile, so yeah. That whole thing is missing where she's like, I can't tell you that the Baroque Works leader, Mr. Zero, is actually Crocodile of the Seven Warlords. And then there's that great reaction from Nami where her jaw hits the floor. And then the Unluckies just are like, oh, you've heard information you're not supposed to have. And then they fly off. And then Nami's angry and she walks away. And then there's the Otter. And it just like shows her a sketch of her face. And she's like, oh, that's so skilled. Damn it, we can't escape now. They know who we are. So I'm so sad that that scene isn't there because that scene's really funny. Yes, but at least during the explosion, Nami does grab onto Vivi and try to shield her eyes and protect her. So they try to establish that early Vivi-Nami connection, though it's a little less convincing, and Vivi's a little more haughty. Like it's like she's still sticking in her Miss Wednesday persona. And that leads to the end of the episode where Mr. 5 and Miss Valentine walk into the bar, see all the agents decimated, and Mr. 9 is still there. And he stands up for Vivi, which is, and I put in quotes, correct. Like, it's important that he does stand up for Vivi, but it's less convincing because he didn't trust her earlier. And this is what I was saying before, where the reasoning, the meta-narrative it's all mixed up. Because the scene at Whiskey Peak, when both Miss Monday, I believe, is the strong nun, and Mr. 9, where they betray Baroque Works to help their friend, shows that the loyalty to Baroque Works isn't strong. It's more that they're worried about the repercussions, but when push comes to shove, they will betray the organization, and that's actually Crocodile's weakness, that this organization that he's built isn't held together by anything that's like, anything that goes beyond the physical. And that's why, Mr. 2 is so quick to help the Straw Hats in the end, and sort of gives up relatively easily, and that there are all this infighting in the ranks, and all of this sort of stuff. And that started at Whiskey Peak with this moment when Vivi getting pursued by Mr. 5 and Miss Valentine, and then, Miss Monday is like, hey, you know what, I'd rather die for a friend. If I'm going to die anyway, I'll die for a friend. And Mr. 9 has that big heroic moment of, I'll take them on even though he stands no chance. And so that's why I say it's correct that he stands up for Vivi, but the scene earlier really didn't convince me of their partnership, because he's worried that Vivi's going to take the credit. That is like, oh, I don't want you to go by yourself. You'll take all the credit for me. And I'm like, if they had that strong bond that Mr. 9's willing to stand up and put his life on the line for Vivi, then, he should sort of trust her as his partner. So it's less convincing, but it is good that it happens. And also, does he die as well? Which means he doesn't get to have a cute little kid with Miss Monday. So that's a shame. And yeah, the scene ends, Mr. 5, Miss Valentine, in hot pursuit. It is good that they point out that Mr. Zero is unforgiving, Baroque Works is unforgiving, because they have technically failed their mission. So that wasn't brought up last episode. It's good that it was brought up here. And it seems like they're saving the Robin scene for the start of next episode, which we'll see how that goes. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I'm glad that they had the fighting nun during the 100 Baroque Works agents fight, but it's bad that Zoro got tricked by it. And there was no little boy threatening Zoro with a gun, who he knocks out. Come on, I want more child violence in my One Piece live action, I say. I'm not monetized anyway, so who cares? But yeah, as a whole, there's some good moments. The framework is there. Obviously, they frame the entire episode differently. Some things, the framing's wrong, but as a whole, it's all right. we'll see how it goes. Hopefully Vivi softens, because Vivi is quite, I would say, a soft character in comparison to Nami, but at the moment she's acting like a second Nami, which isn't good. She needs to be the kind princess that cares and puts people's well-being above her own, and that needs to happen sooner rather than later. So, yeah, as a whole, maybe I rate it a smidgen higher than last episode, though, you know, the comments did give me some thoughts about my interpretation of Crocus, so maybe I'd put them on par. I still think the first episode is so far the best episode, but as a whole, not too bad. Now, I need to rest. My chest is feeling really tight, which isn't good. So, thank you for watching. Thankfully, I've already recorded the script for the video on Sunday, which just needs to be edited. That video is nearly 40 minutes long. It's going to be a lot of editing. Either way, I'll see you on Sunday for the next part of Skypiea, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you then. Toodles!